All right. Good morning, everybody. Sorry for the slight delay. I was rushing from another meeting here, but welcome to this morning session of the Intergroup, and thank you for joining us both here in Strasbourg and online. Today's meeting addresses the important topic for the Intergroup and for the Union as a whole: the transition away from animal testing and towards a future of non-animal science. This has long been an objective of EU policy, and in recent years we have witnessed growing political momentum for concrete steps in this direction. So over the past mandate, the European Parliament adopted a resolution calling for an ambitious and coordinated approach to accelerate the move towards animal-free innovation. At the same time, the European Commission took concrete steps in addressing this priority, including in its chemical strategy for sustainability under the Green Deal, which commits to reducing dependency on animal testing while improving the quality, efficiency, and speed of chemical hazard and risk assessments. This transition offers significant benefits not only for animal welfare, but also for public health and environmental protection and scientific innovation. Modern non-animal methods can generate more reliable and biologically relevant data and enable faster decision-making compared to animal methods, animal testing. At the same time, the non-animal methods help us address serious ethical concerns associated with using animals in testing. Public support for these efforts are clear. So the European Citizens' Initiative, Safe Cruelty-Free Cosmetics, gathered 1.2 million validated signatures across Europe, sending a strong message in favor of EU leadership to end animal testing. In response, the European Commission committed to delivering a roadmap towards phasing out animal testing in chemical safety assessments. And it plans on publishing this roadmap early 2026, and we'll be discussing the perspectives also for this roadmap in today's meeting. While we've seen progress in terms of scientific development and political commitments, the full transition requires continued actions and cooperation from EU institutions, member states, industry, academia, and civil society alike. The new Commission brings an opportunity to build on this momentum. With new priorities and initiatives to modernize the EU's chemical safety framework, we must assure that the upcoming reforms, such as the Chemicals Industrial Package and REACH, are fully aligned with the commitment of the forthcoming roadmap to phase out animal testing. Today's discussion is therefore timely. It allows us to reflect on the direction of travel and consider how to ensure that future legislation supports the uptake of non-animal methods, and we can discuss how we work to minimize the use of animals in safety testing, ensuring a coherent, future-proof regulatory framework. We are also pleased to turn our attention to the One Substance, One Assessment initiative, recently adopted and a key element in achieving greater coherence and efficiency in EU chemicals legislation. We have with us MEP Jutta Paulus, Shadow Rapporteur of the One Substance, One Assessment package, and she will share with us insights on how the issue of animal testing was addressed in that file and how the common data platform on chemicals can help embed the principles of the roadmap and inspire further progress across other legislative dossiers. So before we kick off with this discussion, I have one announcement and the usual practical details. The announcement is that we'll have on Monday the 14th of July in the afternoon, the Agri Committee will hold an exchange of views with the European Commission on the performance of the national CAP strategic plans. This debate comes at a timely moment as a new report by the Institute for European Environmental Policy, IEEP, titled Improving Animal Welfare Through the Common Agricultural Policy, provides the first EU-wide qualitative assessment of how animal welfare is addressed in the CAP. The report highlights that while the CAP has significant potential to promote higher animal welfare standards, its current implementation falls short of effectively incentivizing science-based practices. It puts forward clear and constructive recommendations for both EU institutions and member states to strengthen the animal welfare dimension of the CAP. In view of this upcoming discussion, AGRI members are encouraged to consult the report. I think you can get it via the Eurogroup for Animals. There's an executive summary that you can read. It doesn't take so much time. And consider raising these points during the AGRI meeting if you have a chance to show up there. The Secretariat is happy to share the report and assist in that effort. This meeting is live streamed via Interactio. It's recorded and the materials will be made available on the Intergroup's webpage. And interpretation is provided in English, French, German, Italian and Polish. And so now, I am pleased to introduce our two distinguished speakers who will help us explore the key challenges and opportunities ahead in the shift away from animal testing in EU chemical legislation. We will begin with a presentation from Georg Streck, Policy Officer in the REACH unit at DG GROW of the European Commission. He has joined us online and he will provide an overview of the Commission's forthcoming roadmap towards phasing out animal testing. And he will share insights into the next step for building a regulatory framework that fully enables the use of non-animal methods. So, Mr. Streck, you will be joining us online. I can see that you're with us, and you have the floor for 10 minutes, and then we will hear afterwards from Jutta Paulus. But Mr. Streck, the floor is yours.
Yeah, many thanks for the introduction, and also many thanks for the invitation. Unfortunately, due to other obligations, I cannot be in Strasbourg myself, and thanks also for the possibility to give the presentation online. I should underline that the roadmap is still in development, so it might be that during the process of finalizing it, there might be then changes compared to what I present here. Next slide, please. Can I have the next slide, please? Thanks. So as already said, the EU has a long-standing policy goal to phase out animal testing if that is scientifically possible. The Directive 2010/63 on the protection of animals for scientific purposes also contains that goal. Several resolutions of this House of the European Parliament underlined this goal. And with the Commission communication responding to the European Citizens Initiative, Safe Cruelty-Free Cosmetics, Committed to Europe Without Animal Testing, the Commission committed to draft a plan to reach that policy goal and to prepare a roadmap towards phasing out animal testing for chemical safety assessments. Next slide, please. So the roadmap will provide a plan or a schedule to reach the goal. It will be, again, a Commission communication plus a staff working document for the more scientific technical details. It is planned to be published in the first quarter of 2026, but we know that with publishing the roadmap, the goal will not be reached. So we will need to have an implementation phase, which is a long-term undertaking. The roadmap will be applicable to all relevant pieces of EU chemical legislation that might lead to animal testing for chemical safety assessments. And can I please have the next slide? We have identified 15 pieces of legislations, so I will not go through that here. The list starts with the REACH and the legislation on biocides and plant protection products. But maybe just to point out the number 14, the regulation on classification and labeling, which does not require animal testing or trigger animal testing itself. But it is listed here because it is an important regulation that defines, to some extent, the information that is requested under other pieces of legislation. And due to that, we have listed it here as well. Next slide, please. So the roadmap will describe the long-term goal to replace all animal testing. That is the long-term goal. And this goal comprises, in principle, testing with all kinds of animals, vertebrates and invertebrates, as it is with the EU goal of phasing out animal testing. But I would also like to underline that there is, of course, a certain ranking of the priorities. We have a priority to replace vertebrate testing. That is the highest point on our list. Short-term or mid-term goals of the roadmap then include the possibility to reduce or refine animal testing if we cannot, from the onset, replace animal testing in a certain area. Next slide, please. So the roadmap will try to be as concrete as possible with the action points, with the recommendation. It will also contain milestones and indicators so that the progress of the implementation can be monitored. Next slide, please. So to the content, and unfortunately in the brief time here, I will not be able to describe all the content of the roadmap, but let me at least introduce some of the core elements. So a core element is to describe how current animal testing can be replaced with alternatives. And we went through all the information requirements under the different pieces of legislation and identified possibilities or analyzed whether it is possible. And as said, we will describe that as concrete as possible, if it is possible. For instance, for fish bioaccumulation testing, there are alternatives with in vitro testing or invertebrate testing. And if it is possible, we clearly point that out in the roadmap. We will also describe possibilities for reduction and refinement, especially if it is not possible to immediately replace animal testing. Well, for some method, it will be necessary to develop a method further or to extend the domain of chemical applicability, or to validate methods before they can be used in the regulatory procedures, and that is also part of the roadmap. Next slide, please. I think one important part of the roadmap is then to describe how we manage to achieve the long-term change. We know that for many of the toxicological areas, one-to-one replacement of animal testing with animal-free methods is not possible. And the reason for that is that the animal-free methods or approaches, with approaches I mean a combination of methods, deliver different information than the animal testing itself. And that means we need to have a new thinking, we need to have a paradigm shift in the regulatory assessments and to build a next generation risk assessment framework that provides scientifically sound outputs addressing all the relevant regulatory needs, so that can address all the toxicological areas we need to cover in the legislation, and that covers all the problem formulations. This will also make it necessary in future to adapt the chemical legislations and the guidance. But as said, that is a long-term undertaking. Next slide, please. It is of high importance then to have the right organizational structures that supports the implementation phase. The roadmap will recommend organizational structures, building on the structures which we have today. So we try, of course, not to invent too many new organizational structures. But again, it is quite important to have the right groups and to have the right players involved to be able to phase out animal testing. And the key role in this undertaking are playing the agencies with their collaborative structures, expert groups that allow member state experts and stakeholders from NGOs, industry, researchers to exchange on animal-free approaches and provide input on the priorities for test method development, and also provide advice in the context of regulatory assessments. And I would like to underline that it is highly important that we allow stakeholder input, depending on the topics and the procedures. So we also likely or not likely will recommend to have different organizational structures to also guarantee that we have broad stakeholder input. It is then also quite important that we have good coordination across the different pieces of legislation and sectors. What exists already is an EU agency network, which serves as a coordinative tool for the agencies. That could play a key role here in aligning the work of the agencies. And of course, there's a potential role for the one substance, one assessment group for cohesive approach on test method development needs. Next slide, please. Another important topic is test method development and validation, standardization, qualification of test methods. Identified issues here are that for the development of test methods, well, they do often not address the needs of regulators. That is a feedback we heard many, many times now. So it will be important to have a structure, organizational structure, that allow the regulatory experts to give input on the regulatory needs, and with the expert groups at the agencies, we will have that. And then we plan to collect all that feedback from regulatory experts and publish it in a report of key areas of regulatory needs. And this report can then be updated on a regular basis. Another important gap which was identified is the funding for validation, OECD validation, which is very important for bringing certainty to industry and authorities, and also to move forward on the international level with phasing out animal testing. And we are currently in the process of analyzing options for funding validation activities. The roadmap will also describe our analysis, but this is also certainly a topic on which we will then work further during the implementation phase. Next slide, please. Can I have the next slide, please?
Can we have the next slides?
And I think my next slide is also the last one.
That sounds like perfect timing. If we can just get the next slide. I don't know if it's possible.
Maybe I simply talk while the next slide is coming. So what are the next steps? What is the timeline for finalizing the roadmap? We just mid of June had our last workshop where we invited feedback from member states and stakeholders. We have support from a consultant who's now wrapping up its work and sending us the reports. We will finalize drafting the roadmap by approximately end of August. And then the draft roadmap will go into the Commission internal approval and adoption procedures, so that we are ready with the adoption and publication beginning of 2026. And after that, as said, we need to launch the implementation phase of the roadmap. This will be a long-term undertaking, and I hope that we will then, during the implementation phase, with the help of member states and stakeholders, and of course also you, make the necessary progress. And with that, I end my presentation. Thanks a lot for the opportunity to provide a just brief outline of the roadmap. And of course, if you have any questions, I'm happy to answer them. Thanks.
Thank you very much, Mr. Streck, also for keeping the timeline. I think it probably raises a lot of questions, and we are interested in the perspectives that you have shared with us here. Now we will turn to, and we will then come back, Mr. Streck, if you allow, shortly. But now I will give the floor to Jutta Paulus, my colleague, member of the European Parliament from the Greens. From the Greens group here in the European Parliament. She was shadow rapporteur on the One Substance, One Assessment initiative. And Jutta, I would invite you to reflect on this file, how it addressed the issue of animal testing and which lessons can be drawn. Particular, when we talk about future, in particular when we talk about future reform that can support the uptake of non-animal science across the EU. And maybe, Jutta, you can also just say a couple of words on the One Substance, One Assessments initiative, what it is for those who might not know about it. But you also have 10 minutes, Jutta. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you very much, Niels, and thank you very much for having me and for being interested in this, let's say, quite technical issue. It's not that easy to understand. It's much easier when we talk about the obvious issues. So the One Substance, One Assessment package was actually 3 legislative files. And basically what happened is the Commission, after several pushes from different sides, decided to look at what do we actually have as data. And they found out, okay, we have data on toxicological, ecotoxicological endpoints, on physicochemical properties, on biodegradability, all kinds of data. Some lies with the European Chemicals Agency because the industry has to put in order to be allowed to sell their chemicals on the European market, manufacturers and importers have to hand in a dossier to the European Chemicals Agency, and depending on the amount of chemical they want to bring to the market, different tests have to be included in the dossier. So European Chemicals Agency has received data on roughly 80,000 substances, which is quite a lot. Then we have the EFSA, which is the agency that's responsible for food safety. They have collected all the data on pesticides. We have the EMA, European Medicals Agency. They have all the data on pharmaceuticals. Then we have the biocides regulation, where you also have to hand in data. And all this data was fragmented around all these agencies. And so, of course, this was a system that sort of grew throughout the history of the EU. So, of course, it would have been great to think of it at the very beginning and say, hey, we'll just have one single database for all these data. But, I mean, remember how we started. A lot of this data, at least the one with the European Medical Agency, is still on paper, right? So that was also a challenge. Okay, so the One Substance, One Assessment package looked at how can we basically put all this data in one database and all the technical proceedings of how this should work. And of course, this has major potential to contribute to the phasing down, I would say, of animal testing. Because what means this database, it will be publicly accessible. Of course, not the secret part, not the business secrets, that's clear. But all the endpoints, all the chemical formulas of the substances that have been registered. And guess what? We have such a thing which is called artificial intelligence. It was even active when I was still a CEO of a laboratory. We used QSAR, which means quantitative structure activity relationship, meaning we would feed the formula of a chemical into a software, and the software would predict the melting point, the boiling point, water solubility, vapor pressure, all those physical-chemical properties, which AI has been able to predict for quite a long time already, because it's quite simple. It's related to the energy which is present in the carbon bonding and so forth. It's much more difficult when it comes to toxicological endpoints. But now that we have so much data in one, or that we will have so much data in one place, this is the perfect base for an AI to look at, are there relationships between the structure of a chemical and, for example, liver toxicity or biodegradability or skin irritation or whatever, because with that large amount of data you can really bring this kind of thing forward. And it is even said in the regulation, in Article 1, it says, one of the objectives of the law is to contribute to the replacement and reduction of animal testing wherever possible. So it is already acknowledged in this legislation. Of course, we Greens have also been pushing for it, also pushing for opening up as much as possible for researchers. Because if we keep all this data secret under a lid, it won't be any use. It won't be any use for actually making progress also when it comes to phasing down of animal testing. I think the biggest win which we really got in the negotiations was to include the data from EMA, from the European Medicals Agency, because interestingly, you may remember they had to move because originally they were sitting in London. So after Brexit, they had to move. And I would have expected that before moving, they would digitalize their data, which they did not. So they moved with a lot of stuff, a lot of trucks transporting paper. And now we managed to include that EMA has to bring in their data for relevant substances into this new database. They were fighting tooth and nail against it because it's so much work, it's so much hassle, we have to digitalize all that. And I'm like, well, why didn't you do so in the first place? But it's really valuable data because these are very large studies with a wide range of endpoints, because if you want to register a pharmaceutical, which is meant to be used on human beings, you have to look at a lot of things. And therefore, we will also have a lot of data which will be brought into the database. I would like to bring in two more, let's say, more general thoughts. One, we should always remember we shouldn't focus too much on the individual animal in the lab and forget about all the animals out there. So if we say, hey, it's not that important whether this test delivers the best results because it replaces animal testing in the lab, well, but a lot of animals out in the wild could die because we're not looking enough at what a chemical might do in the environment. So we should always think of both sides. When we started our lab, we had a lot of discussions with people who said, but you're using fish. And I'm like, yeah, we're using fish. We can also say, okay, let's not use fish, and we'll find out early enough when it runs into the next river, the chemical, right? Then we know whether it will kill fish. No, I'd rather know in advance and then be precautionary when handling that chemical. So I think we always have to see both sides there. And not every problem can be solved by simply throwing money at it. That's clear. Not every problem can be solved by throwing money at it. Science is not like a machine you throw in cash and you get out results automatically. Sometimes you will work on a problem for decades or even centuries without receiving a solution. So that's to say, hey, we just have to invest into research and everything will be solved. I'm not so sure. Last but not least, I think we have to be very constructive and very honest in these debates. And I would really not like to see this very important issue politicized too much. Let's try to be constructive. Let's work together on the base of science and facts, and not only on my political view is this and that, and I want to push it through no matter what. That's not what our citizens expect from us, in my view. I believe our citizens want us to do politics based on science, based on facts, based on measurements, based on data, and not on feelings. Thanks.
Okay, thank you very much, Jutta. I think this brings some good perspectives for the discussion that we will have. I know, Jutta, you have to leave 10 minutes to 10.
Yeah.
So comments, questions for Jutta, we'll make sure you have time to answer or comment. So basically, I mean, we have from the Commission, Mr. Streck, who works on the roadmap to phase out or reduce animal testing, and we have then the experience from Jutta on the One Substance, One Assessment initiative and how we can use that in the future. So basically, I'd like to open up the floor and ask if any of you have comments, ideas on how we can work to further this agenda. Tilly, you raised the hand. Yeah, okay. We'll start with Tilly and then, yeah.
Okay, thank you very much to both of you, Georg Streck, and of course also Jutta Paulus for the presentation and also their thoughts on the topic. Yeah, it's quite a long time also that I'm working or very interested on that topic, because we know also the facts of the figures, how many animals are suffering in labs, and where we know that we have new alternative methodologies. Yes, I know there comes always the question with validation. And I was recently in a lab in Saarbrücken about antimicrobial resistance, and also they told me they are trying to replace as much as possible working on embryos of fish, which is a progress for sure, but then always comes the question of validation. And my question is always, yes, we know that the effects, when you look at on a living animal, are different than on organoid or artificial intelligence or digital twin or whatever you call it. But nevertheless, that makes them not more transferable to humans always. So when we discuss the validation, I'm always asking, when did we question so much the validation also of animal testing? But that's another question. I have mainly a question to Georg Streck, because he spoke about the roadmap, and I'm very happy about this work, waiting so long on that. But and then you spoke also about the implementation. So I was wondering how mandatory it is, because roadmap is always just, let me say so, a roadmap. And then I know there's a lot of experience also from Jutta Paulus when she says it's a very technical file, and I know you worked a lot on it. But for me, we're speaking about sentient beings here. So it's difficult to say it's only a technical. We know the science, the facts, know more also about animal suffering in the meantime. So I think that needs to be considered also. But for sure, the One Substance, One Assessment is a step forward. And thinking, maybe somebody has other information, but today, exactly with AI, you put the paper information there, and the AI makes you register it in the computer in the right form. You don't even have to do that. So I'm a little bit astonished indeed that we are still speaking about paper. But that was more reaction. But my main question is really how mandatory will be this roadmap and how strong we can be on the implementation of it. But again, thank you to both of you for this very interesting presentation. It enlightened me.
Thank you, Tilly, and I know you've been working also on this topic, engaging in it. I've been following your work too. Manuela, you had a comment, yes, or question?
Yeah, thank you so much to both of our speakers today. And Mr. Streck was speaking about shift in thinking. And I'm very happy to announce that in the detergents file that he had also listed as 16 files, 16 legislative files that we need to look at. We, in the trilogue outcome, and I mean I was rapporteur for the detergents in the last legislation, we finalized in the trilogues that there should only be animal testing free methods and no animal testing. And that is why I'm happy, and I would like to say to Mr. Streck that he can also mention the next time the detergents as a as a file that now is without animal testing. And I would like to know from him what he thinks how this legislative file, where we have this shift in thinking, can also be a model for other files and how they can take this into account. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Manuela. Sirpa.
Thank you, and thank you for both of you of your presentations. I have more this kind of a practical comments you might want to think as further steps. We know that there's a lot of information, especially this spring and summer, what is happening. One of the breakthroughs is that AI models, this article was in the Nature and referred in the Science, are actually better on forecasting the results based on digital twins and stem cells and you know the older stuff than the animal tests. We are not 100 kilos rats. If you make medicines or cosmetics or detergents to rats, you get perfect stuff for the rats, but not human beings. And then it gets even worse. When you look the cancer tests or Alzheimer's or Parkinson's, that quite often is said that, okay, this is why you need the animal testing, because otherwise you don't want your mother to be the rat. It is less than 5% of the medicines that worked for the animals that have worked for the human beings. So it would be and this is envisaged the breakthrough of sort of a total end of animal testing, not only because of the ethical aspect, what can we do to octopuses or to dogs or the cute rabbits, but because it's unreliable stuff. It was the best what we had in the history, so I'm not sort of throwing stones to anyone. But now when we have more reliable means, we should be using it. Okay, then the second point. You probably have followed that the FDA and NIH in USA have been declaring that they are moving out of the animal testing and drastically reducing them. And NIH, the National Institute of Health, is not funding any more animal-only tests. So yes, this is happening in the USA. Well, Trump administration quite obviously is not. Well, the measles. Yes, I was going to say that the Trump administration is not that overwhelmingly happy about that, but at least there's in some sorts of the society, well, there are not that positive developments in vaccines in Europe either, so I wouldn't be in that case throwing so much stones there anyway. Okay. So what I'm thinking is that could we, as this group, as group of MEPs or some committee, ask the GRC or our science services to provide us this kind of an overview of what is the latest news on this. I wouldn't even call them alternatives, but mainstream and more reliable tests. Point number one, because we should be making quite fact-based the analysis. Secondly, and this is a bit to the Commission, I know it's not your fault, but I'm very worried about the time scale, and we are sometimes a bit slow in Europe. We are a bit of, when the real life is a cheetah, we are a bit of a turtles, you know, like the politics in general are. And what that leads to is that the time frame is pretty long. And if we have this kind of a clear signals that we could be moving forward much faster, in political sense and in global sense, there are interesting developments in China too. And yes, they do violate human rights and a couple of other problems, but that doesn't mean that they would be good in some parts of the science. So could we move and push Commission and EU to start discussing about the international convention about banning the animal tests, because that then the time framework is a long one. And could we speed up the European timetable on this phasing out and moving to more reliable means? And I'm not going to continue, but then the special issue with the chemical agency, they admit, I visited there, that these are, like the stem cells, are more sensitive and better tests, but they are afraid that they are too sensitive for this chemical case, so I wouldn't be that happy about their attitude either.
Okay. Thank you very much,
Sorry
Sirpa.
about.
Don't worry, it's okay. Raquel, maybe if you have a comment, and then we'll give the floor to Jutta, you can react, and then we also have Isabella.
Thank you, Niels. Thank you, colleagues, and to the presenters for the very technical but also very political presentations. So I think they complement each other very well. My comment is on that last point about the politics and also the timing of the transition. And Sirpa, going back to your comment, we do see a lot of countries taking initiatives to defund, for example, animal research with animals. We have seen that just last week in the Netherlands. My concern is when such decisions are not taken in a strategic way, with proper engagement from all actors involved, it can lead to backlash, which is what we are seeing in the Netherlands right now. And I think that's really concerning, because even labs and industries where animals are still being used, which were already busy with the transition, are saying, okay, if you're going to defund us from next year, which is what the motion which has been adopted says, I believe, next year in over 2 years, then we have a problem. And we won't be able to keep deepening the transition or broadening the transition, because we will be forced to make bad decisions because of the timeline. So I was wondering if, based on your experience, if you could also reflect on this a little bit. When is fast too fast?
Okay, Jutta, I will give the floor to you if you want to react, and then I know you have to leave shortly.
I think speed is always a tricky issue, because if you ask the incumbents, they will always say we need more time, right? So as policymaker, it's tricky to find the right time frame and the right timeline. And also we have to keep in mind that often research is not based on programs which run for a year or two, but basically more on studies which could run for 5 or even 10 years. So if you say, hey, I'll pull the plug now and let go 9 years into the drain, that's probably often also not the smartest decision. So I think it is something where we really have to look at it case by case. I want to react also to what Sirpa said on the, you're right, animal methods were never validated. It was just more or less assumed, oh, it will be fine. And often enough, it wasn't. And it even led to very strange things. For example, when we introduced the human skin model test in our lab, which is replacing the skin corrosion test in animals, I mean, you buy these little pots where there's human skin, basically in this little plastic pot, and it comes together with a test protocol, which says, okay, first you apply this and that substance, you wait for so and so long, at this and that temperature, blah, 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 and so that you could actually have an endpoint after a validated protocol. And I had to phone with those people for other reasons, and I said, well, I think this protocol is very sophisticated with a lot of strange steps which I don't understand. Why can't we just apply the substance and have a look? And they said, well, our problem was we had to validate the test against the animal test. So we had to actually, instead of improving the protocol, we had to make it worse so that the outcome would be equivalent to the animal test, so that this human skin would react like an animal skin. And that, of course, is bullshit. I'm sorry to say so, but I mean, that could also be an outcome of the validation, and that's, of course, not really useful. And the reasoning of the authorities was, well, we want to be able to compare, because there are certain CLP requirements, how to label chemicals, and so we have to make those two tests comparable, because the vast amount of data which we have is still animal data. So instead of saying, hey, let's do the human skin model test the best we can and adapt, let's say, a factor to the animal data, they chose to go the other way around. Okay, that was 15 years ago, so maybe things have improved now, but that's a relevant problem. But still, I do want to remind everyone, we're not only talking about effects on human beings we are looking at. We are also looking at effects in the environment. And there, I doubt whether a QSAR or a model can ever find out what really would be happening in an ecosystem, obviously. Even the animal tests which we have there are, let's say, not very comprehensive. For example, when we test pesticides, we're looking at the honeybee. Well, the honeybee is a rather large insect compared to the wild bees. And it's rather, let's say, sturdy compared to many wild bees. So actually saying, hey, this pesticide is no problem for bees, should be this pesticide is no problem for honeybees, which are also being kept by humans and treated when ill and all that, which is not the case for wild bees. So I do believe we have to reap the possibilities that we have with NAMs, but we also have to be very cautious about the limits which these methods also have. Thank you for your attention.
Thank you very much, Jutta, and thank you for sharing these perspectives with us. We have still Mr. Streck with us, so you posed some questions for him. And Isabella, you had a comment, and Sirpa, you also had. Okay. Can we wait? Is it? Then we take Isabella. Yes.
Yeah, sure. And thank you, Jutta, and thank you, Georg, for the presentations. I think it's interesting what Jutta mentioned on the effects of the animals in the wild nature, because there was recently a study presented in Sweden where you can see the effect of antidepressants on fish that live close to sewage plants. So in the wild, these perches, which is a small fish that can be eaten by bigger fish, I don't know. They, in tests, they show no fear to the predatory fish when they have been submitted to the antidepressants that are very high levels in the water outside the sewage plants. So in fact, if you have a perch that hasn't been affected by the antidepressants, they would go and hide. If they were put in a big aquarium where there's a big predatory fish, so they would hide under a stone or whatever. With this antidepressant, they are totally without fear, and they even go and like say hi to the predatory fish, and they get eaten instantly. So, okay, so that's just to build on what Jutta said, and maybe when we do these testings, it's only the human health that is in focus. So it would be interesting to kind of widen the scope also when we look at different chemicals and pharmaceuticals. So not only are they dangerous for human health, but what is the effect in nature when it's also in the sea and in lakes and so on. But my question was really about the funding, because it was mentioned that we have a lack of funding for validation, and my question is, what is the responsibility of the industries when it comes to providing that funding? Because we have the polluter pays principle, and basically if it's a common interest, I think the industry should be paying.
Thank you. Relevant question. Sirpa, short point of clarification.
Just a point of clarification, when I'm talking about speeding up the schedule, I'm not talking about ending the funding next year. But we decided to phase out animal testing 2010, and we are now planning the roadmap. It takes roughly 2 years in commission, 2 years in our system, then 3 years on implementation. We are talking about more than 7 years when it is on the foot. So I think this is pretty long time, and sort of I was thinking, can't we get the roadmap sooner to the Parliament's procedures? That's my intention there.
Thank you, Sirpa. One last comment, question?
Yes, I'm Christos Vasilakos. I'm head of MEP Tsiodras, who was the rapporteur of OZOA file. The reduction of animal testing is an issue that in this House has built strong consensus across the political parties. And we demonstrated it very recently in the adoption of OZOA 3 files package, where we included with a vast majority provisions for the reduction of animal testings. And beyond this, we also included a separate article to speed up the use of alternatives based in a structured way and, of course, on science-based evidence. So, and in the recent past, we have also demonstrated our commitment to the reduction of animal testing in the CLP regulation, which CLP is the brother of REACH, as you may know. So, we have demonstrated our strong engagement in these issues. And I believe it's a very strong message both to the Commission and the public as well. So, after this, now what we expect from the Commission within the preparation of this roadmap to provide strong and achievable recommendations, actions that will be feasible to be achieved, and of course to include the appropriate funding, and not of I analyze some options and we'll see which is the better one. We are waiting from the Commission, we are looking forward from the Commission to include concrete steps to this roadmap and also concrete funding actions. And beyond that, I have also a question to the Commission. As you have seen that the Parliament has a strong engagement in these issues, and it's an issue across the political parties. We have a strong consensus. Have you foreseen, have you thought if the Parliament could be involved in the process of the roadmap?
That is a perfect bridge to Mr. Streck from the Commission. Mr. Streck, we are coming to an end, so you have 3 minutes. We hope that you're still with us, and there were a number of questions for you on implementation, on funding, and as you can hear, there is a strong will in the Parliament across political groups to do something on this area. So, what can we expect? Concrete actions or plans that we don't know what's going to happen with these plans? You have the floor, Mr. Streck.
Yes, and thanks for the comments and the questions. Indeed, as I have said, the idea of the roadmap is to be as concrete as possible, and if we can, we will describe concrete actions. On the question on the implementation phase, let me say we need to have this implementation phase, since for the complex endpoints, I think we are not yet there to have all the necessary animal-free methods to get the information which is needed so that we are certain that we can reach the protection goals which we have, the protection for human health and the environment, for toxicity to reproduction, for carcinogenicity. These are complex endpoints. There we are not there yet. What we have seen with the announcement of the roadmap is that there is really a push towards phasing out animals, and all the colleagues in the agencies, in the member states, but also experts from industry are now thinking quite a lot of how to reach this goal of phasing out animal testing also for the complex endpoints. We would like to keep that momentum during the implementation phase, and then also with full speed continue to find ways how to address these complex endpoints with animal-free information. And as also said, animal-free methods deliver different information than animal testing, so we also need then to think how to implement that in legislations. That is the paradigm shift. The detergents file was mentioned. You may have also recognized that the detergents regulation is one of the 15 areas of pieces of legislation. So this list is from 2023. Maybe now we could remove the detergents from the list. To my knowledge, the detergents file is addressing especially animal testing for the environment in the aquatic phase, bioaccumulation, fish toxicity. These are areas where we have already now quite good methods. So I'm hopeful that in these areas we can replace animal testing also under other pieces of legislation. And yes, I think with that I stop. Thanks again for the opportunity to present the roadmap to you. I think that I have the opportunity to present that is maybe also a good sign that we are quite interested to hear what you think about the roadmap. Many thanks.
Thank you very much, Mr. Streck. It's been a pleasure. As you can see, there's strong cross-political will here in the Parliament to make progress, and we will be following the work on the roadmap, also on upcoming files such as REACH, which will, of course, be very important. We want to make progress here. Also, the citizens want to make progress, as we've seen with the Citizens' Initiative on the cosmetics. So lots of work to do. I think it was a constructive debate here today. And we will then be coming back after the summer break, and here we will talk about the scientific case against fur farming, the 11th of September from 9 to 10 here in Strasbourg. And mentioning fur farming, you might have heard that there's a oral question collecting signatures on this topic, on fur farming, and we still need some signatures for this. So if you have not signed, you can come here, and you're welcome to sign the oral question. Thank you very much, and we will continue the work. Enjoy the summer break if we don't see each other until then, and have a good day.